Hey guys, happy Saturday. This week's video, I want to cover a subject that I see covered a lot, but I just want to do my take on it and give you guys a little bit of information from my perspective and why I think this is the answer. I see there's video series that people do, and there's lots of videos out there. We talked a little bit last week about, the starter snake thing. This I want to touch on what I think is the overall best snake for a pet. So what I want to give you is my criteria and how I break it down and how I evaluate what makes a snake a good pet, and then why I think that this species fits into that. Before we get into that, we'll do another sticker giveaway. So if you want to win these two stickers, 1, 2, for those of us that are not great counters. The way we can do that this time around, we'll do a little bit different than last time. Last time it was the first person. This will do everybody that gives the correct answer will get entered. I'll pick a winner. I can't go on live on YouTube, and I want to be able to let people see that it's legitimate and not just me taping it to pick who I want to win. So I'll probably do the giveaway live on my Instagram. And then, that way at least people can see it there. If you're not on Instagram, I'm sorry. Give me more followers, and then I can go live on YouTube. Right now, it won't let me until I hit 1,000. We're a little under 500 right now. So we got to double it up, and then I'll be able to do that kind of stuff on here. So anyways, the question this week, I'm actually going to make it a little bit easier and tell you which video to look for. This video is going to be the, helping to tame or work with defensive hatchlings video. And what I want you to tell me is the 4 snakes that were used in that video, what they were. So if you tell me what those 4 snakes were, then you'll go ahead and get entered into that. I don't want to take too much longer on this, so let's dive into the best pet snakes. Criteria. First and foremost, the snake needs to be hardy. A hardy species is going to be a lot easier for somebody that hasn't kept before to keep as a pet. So you don't want something that's going to be very difficult or have really pinpoint husbandry where a minor mistake could be fatal or very detrimental to the health of the animal. So that's first and foremost. Second is a good appetite. A snake that's going to eat, a snake that's not going to fast, a snake that's not going to give you a hard time. It's not going to be picky about prey items, things like that. I think that's pretty important. As you can see now with the stuff going on, it's a little bit harder at times to get snake food. So you want a snake that's going to eat what you offer it, whether it be frozen thawed, live, pre-killed, rats, mice, quail, guinea pigs, rabbits, you name it. Obviously all appropriate size for the animal. Also, tolerance. It's got to be tolerant of handling. If it's not tolerant of handling, then it really doesn't make a good pet. And I'm looking at pet in the interaction sense. Yes, people can have display animals and things along those lines, but this is an animal for a pet that you can take out of its cage. It's not going to stress it out. It's not going to put it off of food. It's not going to make the animal sick. Obviously, every animal is an individual. There are some animals that will, be harder to get to accept that. But that's where going through a good breeder and a breeder that breeds for temperament from established animals that you can predict a little bit. If you keep them properly, here's what you're going to get. Nothing's 100%, but that definitely gives you the best shot at success there. So we'll take out the first example of this species here as we continue going over the criteria. So obviously tolerance, like I said, is huge. I think Sumatran short-tailed pythons make probably the best, if not one of the best pet snakes out there. Now you might say that I'm biased because I keep them, but part of the reason that I keep them and work with them is because they're such wonderful animals. My personal favorite species of snake is actually African rock pythons. I don't think that makes a good pet for pretty much anybody. I love them. I love working with them. I love the challenge. I love earning the snake's respect and all that stuff. But that's a snake that can kill you, and that's a snake that shouldn't be in the hands of an average keeper. Whereas this is a snake that pretty much anybody could keep. Yes, they have husbandry requirements. Yes, there's certain things that are kind of absolute that you have to do. But it's pretty easy to do as long as you're willing to spend the money or put in the time and effort. They tolerate handling fantastically, even as babies. This is a very young animal, and you can see that it's a little bit nervous because I'm moving it around and doing things, but it's not reacting. It's thinking. It's processing. It's saying, okay, what's going on in this situation? How do I need to react? As opposed to a lot of other species that just react. As soon as something's off, they're gonna hit you with a strike, or they're gonna get flighty. These snakes, you know, let the wheels spin a little bit and try to evaluate stuff. So that's very nice. As far as appetite goes, can't beat them. I don't know of a snake that, you know, is harder to put off food than a Sumatran shorttail. I have heard of examples where people have feeding problems with them. I've kept a lot of them. I've bred a lot of them. I have never had one be a bad feeder. I've never had one fail to thrive and not eat on its own. I've never assist fed a Sumatran, nothing. They are just rock solid. Part of it is because I bought my animals from established people. I got them from good lineage. They're good, solid animals. So I'm producing good, solid animals. So obviously that makes a difference. This, as I said, is a chrome head example. This is a male that I produced out of my last clutch out of Sambuca, who's not been on the channel. Hopefully she will be at some point soon. But she throws really nice chromes. And actually the father to this snake I'll have in the video in a little bit. I have him out here with me. I only brought 4 out for the video just because I just had 4 holding bins sitting around that were ready to roll. And the cat's lurking somewhere, so I can't just have snakes out sitting on the couch or anything like that. So they've got to be in the holding bins right now, so we did 4. And I did 2 chromes and 2 darker animals. So I went over the food, I went over the tolerance of handling. As far as care goes, yes, they need to be a certain degree humid. Yes, you need to keep them cool enough. Yes, you need to keep them clean. But that's really basic stuff. So as long as you do that and you give them the ventilation that they need, these guys are really, really hardy. Out of the 3 species, I find blood pythons probably to be the most susceptible to issues, just in personal experience. And these guys being the hardiest. Borneos lean more towards this way as far as sensitivity to changes and things like that. These guys are rock solid. I can take them outside in the yard. I can sit them on my lap here for an hour. I could throw one on my shoulder while I'm doing something. Obviously, make sure you support them because they're not really good at doing that on their own. But they really tolerate just about everything, especially if they're comfortable with their environment. We've done a video on that before and how important it is for a snake to be comfortable in its cage. If it's comfortable in its cage, it's far more likely to tolerate handling in other situations because it can go back and decompress. It's not stress on top of an already stressed situation, which is where you get a lot of problems with bloods and shorttails, is when you're keeping them improperly. Now that extra stress is just too much for them. It pushes them past that point. But this is a snake you could easily take out 2 to 3 times a week. Obviously, if you feed them, I usually try to give them at least 4 days, left alone. A snake this size, their metabolism's pretty high as babies compared to adults. So you could probably get away with 3 days as long as it wasn't a big meal. But they do take some time to digest, and I like to leave them be for that period of time. Other than that, though, I mean, you could have this snake out for an hour right now. I could take it out for an hour tomorrow. Again, it's not going to stress it out. As I've said, case-by-case basis, you might get an individual that's a little bit more high-strung than others. So you need to tailor it to that. But by and large, once again, you buy from the right people and you keep the animal right, they're going to be super tolerant of everything. Let's switch to another animal here. Put that one back. Put this top on. Myself a little quick hand sanitize. I have my room set up in like quadrants. These snakes are from different quadrants, so I'm hand sanitizing between them. If they were in the same rack or something, I'd probably be less likely to do that. No issues with these animals, but I just always like to be safe. What are you doing upside down? This is a female that's a little bit older, also produced here, but this is a darker example, and she is out of different parents, different mother, different father. You can see her mother in the Meet the Collection video, Incognito. She's on the channel. Very cool snake, very dark. This animal has a lot of coloring up left to do, which in this case will be getting darker. You'll see a lot less of that white on the side. And you can see already this animal has almost no browns that are pretty characteristic of Sumatran shorttails. It's kind of my goal to work that brown out of my stuff from an earlier and earlier age. So this is an animal that's a key to the future for me because at a very early age, her brown was pretty much gone. You can see a little bit of it down near her tail here, but very, very minimal. And so as you're trying to progress, you pick the animals with the least amount of that, and you keep breeding them together, and you hopefully get the results you want. But you can see, once again, super tolerant of the handling, no issues here. This snake would never ever refuse a meal. If she refused a meal, I would assume that she's already dead, because I'm pretty sure she'd even eat her deathbed. These guys are very excitable around food, though, so that's something to keep in mind. When they smell food thawing, going into their cage is an adventure, because they're going to come for it. They don't mean to be mean or aggressive or anything like that, but once food's on their mind, they really are tracked on food. I don't ever get a food response when I'm not feeding them, but it doesn't mean they're not capable of it. So always be aware going into their cage that they may present with a food response. Has nothing to do with feeding them in their cage, has nothing to do with anything like that. They're just very food motivated animals. Think of if you've ever trained a dog before, you get those dogs that are really food motivated, treats really work. Think of them kind of like that, where food is really their motivator for everything. Other than that, they're pretty sedentary animals. So if you were looking for a pet snake that you were going to have on display and it's going to move around and be exciting, these guys wouldn't fit into that category. So that's why you always want to make that list of what you're actually looking for, so that you make sure you pick the right animal for you. These guys are sedentary, they don't move. Naturally in the wild, they'll sit in the same place for days, even weeks at a time without moving, waiting for prey. And they do the same in captivity. Now, some of mine are more engaging than others, so when I come into the room, some of them will come to the front of the cage to see if I have food or see what I'm doing. It's another thing that makes these guys really fun, is they are pretty interactive as far as snakes go. As sedentary as they are, once you take them out, they'll move around a little bit, they'll check things out. When they go outside, they like to look around, see what's around them. They like to kind of check things out, they like to check me out. They'll always be very interested in what I'm doing. And one of the cool things about short-tails that's different than a lot of other species of snakes is when they are sitting and they're waiting for prey to come along, a lot of other animals will move their head to watch prey or to watch a predator. These guys do more with their eyes. They'll keep their head positioned straight, but you'll watch their eyes shift to follow you a lot more. And it's kind of creepy at times, but it's also really, really cool. Very cool thing to watch. I don't know if you can really see her eyes. They kind of look kind of dopey when they're just chilling like this. I'm trying to get her to a level where it's not too blurry. But she's a very, very cool snake, one I'm very excited about, very proud to have produced. But you can just see where, I'm sitting here, I'm not really paying attention to her. I'm not worried about her biting me. I'm not worried about anything. I can feel her body. I can feel how relaxed she is. I know my animals. I know what they'll tolerate, what they won't. But Sumatrans really tolerate a lot. And that's really what makes them so special as pets. Pretty much anything you throw at these animals, they'll deal with, as long as they're comfortable in that environment and as long as they feel they can trust you. It doesn't take much to earn their trust like a lot of other species. They're pretty trusting until you give them a reason not to be. Even at hatch, it takes about a week from a new baby to hatch before they drop any attitude at all. And I've only had one clutch, which was those chromes that I just showed you, that actually really had any real attitude. And it was so mild. But it was about a week to 10 days before that went away. I had a couple photo sessions with them outside where they were just not happy, posturing up and things along those lines. They also really don't care what you offer them for food. My Sumatrans will eat anything. I've never had one be picky. I've never had one that wouldn't take frozen thawed. I've never had one that wouldn't take pre-killed. They're all willing to take live, whereas I've had a lot of blood pythons that don't want to take live prey. I've not seen that with Sumatran short-tails. Obviously, I switch them over to frozen thawed as quickly as possible, but I do typically start them out with a live meal or two and then switch them. So this next snake is a direct sibling to the one I just had out. Same pairing, same parents, just a different clutch, different year. So this girl you've also seen before is Voodoo Queen. She's been on the channel before. So she's just a little bit older than that last animal, but she's produced by the same parents. I don't feel that she is as quality as that last girl's gonna be when she's done, but you can see there's less of the white. It's not as much. It's still there and visible. And depending on the day and her mood, you'll see more and less of it. But, you know, it's you can still see a little brown there. She's not as dark as that other girl started out at a similar age. So it'll be interesting once they're both adults to compare them side by side. But for now, I would consider that other female a little step up from her. Voodoo Queen's very nice. Morticia, her sister's actually nicer. I just didn't grab her for this video. Hi. Once again, though, you can see very tolerant, very confident, coming right up to me. Good tongue flicks where she's checking stuff out and curious, but not nervous at all. This snake doesn't care about much. I've taken her to reptile shows before. She's been out for the better part of 8 hours, getting handled by 100, 200 people. Never thought anything about it. She'll sleep right on the table. She'll sleep right on my lap. While all that's going on around her, people everywhere, it just doesn't faze her. And that's pretty typical of these guys. I love taking these guys to events where people want to handle snakes. Obviously, we have to be a little bit more careful now, especially with other reptile keepers, because they could have mites, they could have, you know, Nido, whatever it is in their collection you don't want near your animals. But generally speaking, when you're going to do programs, you're not dealing with a lot of reptile people, so it's a little bit less of a concern. But you always make people hand sanitize before they touch your animals, and, you know, make sure their hands are washed and clean. But she will tolerate anybody, anytime. Anybody can go in her cage and take her out. I can hand her to the kids. They can walk around with her. I can put her outside for 2 hours and go pick her up, and she's not going to give me any different reaction than picking her up in her cage or picking her up just now like I did for this. They can be vocal animals, and sometimes you will hear noise come out. And they are heavy breathers too, so sometimes moving them pushes some air around and they'll expel that air, and people think that that's them being aggressive or defensive, and it's not the case. They're just talkative at times, and then sometimes you're just kind of pushing air through them. Their bellies are pretty cool too, a nice contrast to that dark and the whites going up the sides. The white I actually enjoy quite a bit, as I've mentioned before, so I don't mind if they keep the white into adults. I think white and black contrast looks really cool. I just want the brown gone. Can you get out of my face? But she is really awesome. Black Magic, Amina, Incognito, Sambuca, all snakes I can hand to anybody, anytime. No concern. I don't feel nervous at all. Sambuca has very expressive eyes, and she always looks like, you know, she thinks you're the dumbest person ever. But she tolerates everything just as well as these other guys do. We'll take the last one out here. And you guys can feel free to comment below on the snake that you feel makes the best pet snake. Part of the criteria that I listed is why I don't consider ball pythons, because they're too fickle as far as eating goes, and they can be too picky. But snakes like corn snakes, king snakes can make great pets, especially for people that want a more active species that's going to move around a little bit more. But I think these are really good for people, especially new keepers, because they're less reactive. Like a corn can be a very herky-jerky snake. It doesn't mean it wants to bite you. But to a new person, that can be a little nerve-wracking, having all that movement going on, the head flinging back and forth, you know, just things that they do because they're a much faster pace. These guys don't really get like that. And as long as you support their weight and they're comfortable with you, they'll sit there forever. So this guy is the father of the first animal. And you'll see that even as adults, not all of them get that big. He's not a very big male at all. This is the male chrome head. I'm trying to turn him so you can see his head here. He's probably a little on the thin side right now. I had him slim down for the breeding season, decided not to breed him. It's funny, when I first got him out, his head was super chrome. It's a little bit darker right now. They do change their head appearance like that. Happens quite often. He's just not going to cooperate with me showing it to you. But he's a pretty cool dark animal with the nice chrome head. And sometimes he's fired up so nice. I have some really nice pictures of him outside where that head is just electric. That clutch was his first. And he was a very willing breeder, which was nice. He was produced by Kara at the Blood Cell. The other day I did a video where I talked about buying a trio of snakes with that super striped female that I showed off. This was the chrome head that I purchased there, so I didn't get this one from Kara, although I've purchased a lot of animals from her. Incognito, Sambuca, Tux, Electra, Spot On, Midnight Rider, just to name a few of my animals that I've gotten from her. Let's see that chrome head a little bit better, of course. keep turning him. But yeah, so I would put a little bit more weight on him, not much, but he could use a little bit more just to give you guys an idea. You can see he's a little thin to the tail area. But for breeding males, usually you do want them on the thinner side. Keeps them motivated. Fat males are lazy. I can attest to that personally. So, you know, you want to keep them looking for food, keep them looking for ladies, and then they're much better breeders. But you don't want to get them down to a dangerous level. This snake's not at a dangerous level, but he could definitely use a bit, especially now that he's not going to breed again for at least 6 or 7 months. So I'll increase his food intake a little bit right now, just ever so slight. You need very little tweaks to change, and maybe I'll do a little bit of a video with him in like 4 months and show you just that little bit of change and how it affects it. We'll talk about stuff like that. Hi. Once again, very tolerant. This is a snake that I don't really handle recreationally at all. Voodoo Queen I do, just, you know, I produced her. I'm very fond of her. Not that I'm not fond of this animal, but I really like spending time with her. Those babies that I had out, the chrome male I almost never handle. The darker female I do handle a little bit. But these snakes don't need a lot of handling. Once they're comfortable and happy, you can pretty much do whatever with them and they tolerate it. I could take this snake to a program just the same as any other of my Sumatrans, and he would be absolutely fine. He's a little bit more food motivated than the girls are outside of feeding time. He would probably bite you if you were just to jam your hand in his face quickly. He doesn't have like an overwhelming food response, but he's typically looking for food anytime his cage opens. So you just give him a little quick pat in the side and then pick him up and he's good. But I really do think that these guys make amazing pets. I think they're very rewarding to work with. They're very intelligent animals. They're interested in you. They'll interact with you. They will tolerate a lot of different situations. As far as caging, you can imagine, like I said, this is an adult male. They can get bigger. Sambuca's probably about twice his size, but she's a really big Sumatran female. And you never really need anything more than 4x3 or so for a Sumatran in almost every case. So you're not talking about dedicating a huge wing in your house or anything, but they still have that big snake feel because they're a little bit thicker and because they get a decent size. But you can expect them to finish, you know, around 4 to 5 feet most of the time. Sambuca's probably like 5'5" if I had to guess. I've never actually measured her. And I've only seen 1 or 2 females that were quite a bit larger, but it's not very common. And because of their sedentary nature, you really don't need to give them, you know, a lot of space to explore kind of thing. Because yes, they will use space and they'll utilize it. So if you want to give it to them, in most cases you can. But it's not overly necessary because they really naturally just sit in one spot and don't move. You know, you'll see them in the same spot for a week, 10 days. All of a sudden they'll go get some water and go back, not move for another week. You come in with food, they're moving quick. But you do want to give them enough space where they can stretch out and they can move and they can, you know, thermoregulate or whatever it is that they need to do. They just don't need like an 8-foot cage. They're just, it's not something that they need. You can give it to them, but it's not like, say, even a boa constrictor where they're a more active species where they're going to utilize more of that space, where they're going to climb. These guys are not climbers. They don't need anything arboreal. It's actually kind of dangerous to give it to them. I mean, if you give them something a couple inches off the ground, it's not the end of the world. But anything higher than that, you're risking injury because they are very clumsy animals that they don't know how to climb. They don't know how to hold on. So a lot of other snakes will anchor and hold on to you. These guys don't really do that. That's why both my hands are supporting him and keeping him from being able to fall. If I wasn't doing that, he would just flop over and not think twice about it. So again, tell me what you guys think. I'm kind of droning on here a little bit. Tell me what species you really love as pets and why. But anybody that has these snakes, I think, can attest to the fact that they're just amazing animals. And they're hardy, they eat well, they tolerate handling, they look beautiful. You got a couple of different color variations without having to get into all the morphs. They only have really the caramel albino, which I'm not crazy about, but it exists if you like that. Otherwise, I just like these chrome heads, the locality-based orange heads, which I don't keep, but those are pretty cool. And then obviously I really like the dark stuff. So let me know, interested to hear. Don't forget about the contest. We'll do this next weekend and we'll see who the winner is. and then they'll get these 2 stickers in the mail. We'll see you guys.